Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling something that's really fundamentally reshaped our world in this 21st century.
hmm
It's the profound and often, well, kind of head-spinning impact of social media on politics.
Absolutely. It's huge.
These platforms, right? They started as just ways to connect with friends, maybe share some
Yeah,
photos,
pretty innocent beginnings.
and somehow they've morphed into these seriously powerful forces in, how we govern ourselves. It's quite the shift, isn't it?
It really is. And I think what's really key, maybe right off the bat,
Yeah.
is just the speed, right?
Mhm.
The sheer velocity of this transformation. It feels like it went from, like you said, vacation photos to potentially swaying elections in, well, almost the blink of an eye.
Uh-huh.
And that rapid evolution, that's something we really need to unpack.
Exactly. And to do that, we've been digging into some really fascinating material.
Mm.
We've specifically been looking at excerpts from a YouTube podcast script. It's from a channel called The Digital Frontier. The episode title is a bit of a mouthful, but it really tells the story. How social media rewrote politics. Arab Spring, propaganda, and fake news.
Yeah, it's a great title because it really captures that dramatic arc we're going to explore today.
How so?
Well, you see how social media just burst onto the political scene,
Yeah.
full of incredible promise.
Right, the hopeful phase.
Exactly. And then we
Yeah.
have to grapple with some of the much darker challenges it's presented since then.
So our mission today, basically, is to get a real handle on that multifaceted role.
Mm-hmm.
We want to understand how social media became this, unexpected engine for democratic movements.
Yeah, the Arab Spring aspect.
But also, and this is crucial, how those same features, the things that made it powerful, have been exploited, for spreading misinformation, for manipulation.
It's a double-edged sword, really.
Totally. So let's get started. Where should we begin?
Okay, let's dive right into the Arab Spring then. The Digital Frontier script really sets this up, this period around 2010, as social media's big coming out party on the global political stage.
That's right. The script paints a really powerful picture. It focuses on Mohamed Bouazizi in Tunisia, his self-immolation.
A real catalyst.
Exactly, born out of this deep frustration with government corruption, and it acted as this initial spark. But what's fascinating and what the script really emphasizes is how social media became the accelerant,
Yeah.
turning a local tragedy into this huge, widespread revolution.
And what's key here, I think, is the contrast. How would this have happened before social media?
Right, quite.
Traditionally, organizing dissent relied on these slow, often really risky underground networks.
Yeah, pamphlets in the dark, secret meetings.
Exactly. And suddenly, platforms like Facebook and Twitter offered this almost instantaneous, far-reaching way to connect and mobilize people. Huge difference.
It's almost hard to imagine now, looking back, but the script really drives home the real-time nature of it. People could organize protests, within hours. And crucially, the ability to live stream events.
Oh, yeah, that was massive.
The script specifically mentions instances of alleged police brutality being broadcast live.
Right, so these things weren't happening in secret anymore.
The whole world was watching, basically,
Yeah,
often as it happened.
and that's where the power dynamic just completely shifted. The script highlights how social media basically bypassed the state-controlled media.
Which had a total stranglehold in many of these countries, right, for decades.
Total control over the narrative. And suddenly, citizens could become their own reporters,
Yeah.
sharing their experiences, their evidence directly. Global audience.
That put unprecedented pressure on these regimes. They just weren't used to that kind of scrutiny.
Not at all.
And we saw some pretty dramatic results, didn't we? The script points to the toppling of leaders who'd been in power for years.
Leaders who had controlled the traditional media, the state TV, the government papers.
Social media just went around that wall.
Yeah. The example of Egypt is really telling here. The Digital Frontier script mentions the hashtag Jan25 hashtag.
I remember that. It was everywhere.
It became this global symbol of the uprising. And, even when the government tried that desperate move, shutting down the internet.
Which seemed like a huge step at the time.
Oh, it was, trying to regain control of the narrative.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it just couldn't stop the momentum. The protests on the ground kept going.
It almost backfired, didn't it?
In a way, yeah. The very act of trying to silence that digital conversation almost amplified the sense that something massive was happening, made people pay even more attention.
It's like a paradox, isn't it? Trying to control information highlighted the power of the information they were trying to suppress.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But as the script also points out quite astutely, this period also marked a turning point in maybe a less optimistic way.
How so?
Well, while social media initially seemed like this purely liberating force,
Yeah, power to the people.
it almost immediately became a new battleground, a new arena for power struggles, for control.
Ah, okay. So the tool itself wasn't inherently good or bad.
Exactly. That initial hope, that social media was inherently democratizing. It started to fade a bit as people realized these incredibly powerful tools could be used for, well, a whole range of purposes, not all of them benign,
So that open, real-time nature that empowered citizens.
could also be exploited by those seeking to maintain power or even regain control they'd lost.
Right. Which brings us to the, let's say, the more concerning part of this whole story.
Mm-hmm. This shift.
The digital frontier script then shifts its focus. It looks at more recent events, particularly around 2016, Brexit, the U.S. election are mentioned.
Yeah, and this is when those terms, weaponized misinformation, fake news, they just exploded into the public consciousness, didn't they?
They really did. And what's crucial here, and the script emphasizes this, is that this wasn't just like your uncle accidentally sharing a dodgy article.
No, no, this was different.
It was a shift towards deliberate, coordinated campaigns aimed specifically at influencing democratic processes.
It wasn't just random noise online. It was often a targeted effort, strategic.
And the script, it doesn't shy away from pointing fingers or at least mentioning specific examples. It talks about Russia's alleged interference as a prime illustration.
Right. And the tactics reportedly used. I mean, flooding social media with incredibly divisive content, memes, fake accounts, amplifying certain messages.
And the goal wasn't always even to convince people of a specific falsehood, right? That's what's insidious.
Exactly. Sometimes it seems the goal was just to sow discord, to erode trust. Trust in media, trust in institutions, trust in each other.
That's a key insight from the script, I think. The aim could be just to create so much confusion, so much doubt that people just throw their hands up. They don't know what to believe.
Which, of course, undermines their faith in the democratic process itself. If you lose trust in everything, how do you make informed decisions? It gets much harder.
And if we link this back to the Arab Spring, like the script does, you see this kind of learning process happening for authoritarian regimes.
Yeah, they watch what happened.
They saw the potential of social media to mobilize dissent, and they adapted their strategies. They learned.
Definitely. So instead of those blunt tactics like a complete internet shutdown, which, let's face it, draws a lot of negative international attention.
Yeah, bad PR.
They started exploring more subtle ways to control the information environment from within the platforms.
Okay, and the script gives examples of this.
It does. Some really specific and, frankly, quite chilling examples of this adaptation.
Like what?
Well, the idea of China's 50-cent army, basically state-sponsored commenters, or the organized efforts of, say, Saudi troll farms to shape online narratives, push specific agendas.
Wow.
And then there's the increasingly sophisticated threat of AI-generated deepfakes.
Ah, yeah, that feels like the next frontier.
It really does. Using these fakes as tools for silencing dissent, for manipulating public opinion. I mean, it's a world away from those early days of, seemingly organic revolutionary movements coordinated on Twitter.
It really is. Now you have these sophisticated actors actively trying to shape and distort the online conversation. It's deliberate.
It is. And this leads to a really fundamental question, doesn't it? Which the digital frontier script poses quite directly.
Which is?
If social media initially gave power to the people to challenge authoritarianism, can those same authoritarian regimes now leverage these very tools to undermine the very concept of truth itself?
Wow. That's a really profound and frankly unsettling question to consider.
It is. It really forces you to think about whether that initial promise, that idea of a more democratized information landscape, has been, well, fundamentally subverted by these new forms of manipulation and control.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Does the script offer any hope? Any pushback?
It does pivot, yeah. It explores whether democracy has any tools to fight back in this new environment, what can be done.
Okay, good. So what are some of those countermeasures?
Well, what's somewhat encouraging is that the script highlights ongoing efforts on multiple fronts. It's not just one thing. We're seeing the growth of independent fact-checking organizations, for example. Coalitions working to debunk misinformation.
Okay, so trying to verify information.
Exactly. Then there's the increasing use of encrypted communication apps like Signal, by activists, that suggests a move towards more secure forms of digital organizing, maybe trying to get out of the reach of state surveillance.
Trying to stay one step ahead.
And then there were regulatory attempts, like the EU's Digital Services Act as mentioned. It signals this growing awareness at a policy level that something needs to be done about disinformation on these massive platforms.
So attempts are being made. Fact-checking, secure comms, regulation.
Yeah, but the script also touches on just how incredibly complex and, well, ongoing the debates are around how these platforms should even be governed.
It's not simple.
Not at all. The example used is Elon Musk's Twitter chaos, as the script bluntly puts it.
Right.
And that really underscores how difficult this is, how messy. You've got deeply held principles around free speech clashing with concerns about harm.
Right. Where do you draw the line?
Exactly. And just the sheer scale and speed of information flow on these platforms, it makes effective moderation a monumental, maybe even impossible challenge sometimes. It's not just a simple matter of saying, delete this bad content.
No, definitely not. And I guess experts probably disagree on the best way forward.
Oh, absolutely. And the Digital Frontier script presents some of these contrasting viewpoints, which I think are really valuable for listeners to consider.
Okay, like what?
Well, on one hand, you've got a more optimistic view.
Okay.
This view highlights things like growing digital literacy, the idea that people generally are getting better, more discerning about the information they see online, maybe less likely to fall for obvious fakes.
So users are adapting too.
Potentially. And this view also points to potential improvements in platform moderation, maybe using AI for good, to detect manipulation better.
Okay, that's the hopeful angle. What's the other side?
Well, and there's the more skeptical perspective. And this one raises some really serious concerns, particularly around the rapid advancement of AI.
The deepfakes again.
Yeah, exactly. The potential for creating increasingly realistic deepfakes, videos, audio clips that look and sound completely real that are totally fabricated,
Terrifying.
that could become virtually indistinguishable from genuine content that is genuinely alarming for truth and trust online.
And it's not just deepfakes, is it?
No. There's also the sheer volume of automated accounts, bots. The potential for bots to just flood online discussions, maybe even significantly outnumber real users in some spaces.
So you don't know who or what you're interacting with.
Precisely. It raises fundamental questions about the authenticity of online discourse. Can you even have a genuine human conversation sometimes?
It all culminates in this idea, which the script articulates really well, of a kind of digital arms race.
That's a very apt way to put it.
It feels like we're constantly in this cycle, right? New methods of manipulation emerge.
Then attempts to develop countermeasures.
And the future of free, open societies potentially hangs in the balance.
It does. And what's crucial for everyone listening, I think, is to understand this isn't a static situation.
Yeah.
It's not fixed.
Right. It's evolving.
The technologies are constantly evolving, the tactics are adapting, and our own understanding of this profound impact social media has on politics is continuously being refined. We're learning as we go.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, drawing on the Digital Frontiers exploration, we want to leave you, the listener, with a direct question, something to really chew on. Considering everything we've discussed, from those initial, maybe naive hopes of the Arab Spring,
to the much more troubling realities of weaponized misinformation and state manipulation.
What do you ultimately believe is the net effect? Is social media, on balance, a positive or negative force for democracy in the 21st century?
Yeah, it's a really complex equation. There are no easy answers here. And that balance sheet might very well keep shifting as these technologies advance, societies adapt, as our understanding deepens.
So no simple verdict today.
No, definitely not. But we really encourage you to keep exploring this topic, to approach the information you encounter online with, a critical eye, and to form your own informed perspectives based on what you see and learn.
Because at its heart, this deep dive into social media and politics, as illuminated by the digital frontier, it reveals this fundamental ongoing tension, doesn't it?
It really does.
You've got the incredible potential of these digital platforms to empower, to connect, to give voice.
Existing right alongside their very real vulnerability, their susceptibility to manipulation, to exploitation, to being turned against the very ideals they seem to initially promise.
It's a dynamic, evolving challenge, and it's one that we all need to be acutely aware of as we navigate this ever-changing modern political landscape.
Absolutely. No easy answers, but definitely something worth thinking hard about.